So as part of the cardiopulmonary exercise test, there's some preliminary tests that are done before the subject gets on the bike. And part of that is looking at pulmonary function at rest. So the test that she's doing here is to look at pulmonary function without exercise. So she's breathing in and out as hard as she can for 12 seconds. And it's called a maximal voluntary ventilation test, and it just sees how much air she can breathe in and out in a minute. We're going to compare the values that she gets at rest to the values that she can produce during exercise. Jared's putting ECG electrodes to just do a standard 12-lead ECG. And the electrocardiogram is done at rest, just to make sure we'd have no resting cardiac dysfunction. So this is the beginning of the cardiopulmonary exercise test on day one. And some of the things that are being collected from the subject you can follow based on the instrumentation that's placed on her body. So on her right hand, on her finger there, is a little device that's measuring oxygenation of her blood. And the computer records that continuously throughout the test just to make sure that she's getting an adequate oxygenation of the blood from her lungs into the tissues. The thing that's probably most notable is the big valve that's over the top of her face. That valve in the opening is collecting all of the air that she breathes out. And really the sophisticated device there is actually only measuring three things in the air that she breathes out: the volume of air that's being exchanged, and then the percentage of the oxygen and the percentage of CO2 in the air. And we use those three values to calculate things like oxygen consumption, CO2 production, pulmonary ventilation. Some of the interpretations of, the most important interpretations of the exercise test come from the exhaled air. The blood pressure cuff on her left arm is just being used to measure blood pressure. Jared will record blood pressure every 2 minutes. So what you'd expect to see is systolic blood pressure rise as cardiac output goes up throughout the test. And then the diastolic blood pressure values vary, sometimes a small rise, sometimes even a fall in diastolic pressure. There's a little white sheet of paper right in front of the subject, and that has a scale on the front of it where the subject ranks how hard they're working. It's called a Borg scale, and it ranks their exercise intensity from a low of 6 to a high of 20. And so Jared will be asking the subject every minute, how do you feel? And that's a subjective rating of how the subject's working. The cadence or the pace of the pedaling on the bike remains constant through the whole test. So as the subject's pedaling, she'll maintain that same cadence all the way throughout the test. The difference is the resistance that she feels to those pedals will slowly and gradually increase. So the expression, it's a progressive or incremental exercise test, means that the resistance keeps going up until finally they can't pedal anymore. So it starts out very easy and then progressively gets more and more difficult until maximal exertion is reached.